It was just past dawn in the vast emptiness of the Pacific when routine aboard the USS Valiant was shattered. The steady hum of operations, the low chatter on the bridge, the rhythmic clanging of tools on the flight deck, all of it froze in an instant. Deep inside the carrier's Combat Information Center, a junior radar operator's voice cracked through the stillness. Fast-moving contact. Bearing 2110. Altitude dropping fast. Eyes snapped to the green-lit radar screen. A single blip was cutting an unforgiving path directly toward the carrier's restricted airspace. No transponder code. No prior warning. The officer of the deck didn't hesitate. Alarms blared across the ship, sending a shiver of urgency through every steel corridor. Then, from the low glow of dawn, a silhouette emerged from the horizon haze. The sharp delta of wings, the gleam of afterburner heat, there was no mistaking the identity. A Chinese J-16 strike fighter, slicing through the sky with the precision of a blade. Yet, something was off. This wasn't a high-speed attack run. The jet's landing gear was lowering. Its approach was steady, deliberate, as if it intended to set down on Valiant's deck. For a heartbeat, the bridge went silent. The possibility swirled defection, navigational error, or something darker. A calculated test of America's nerve, right in the middle of contested Pacific waters. Every instinct screamed that whatever this was, it wasn't ordinary. On the open deck, yellow shirt handlers froze mid-task, eyes tracking the intruder. Below, engineers and ordnance crews paused in their work, listening to the rising growl of twin engines. The sky above the carrier had just become the most dangerous patch of air in the world. The warning klaxons wailed, their shrill cry echoing off the carrier's massive steel frame. On the flight deck, chaos organized itself into precision crews sprinted to designated stations, yellow shirts waving frantic hand signals to clear every obstacle from the potential landing zone. The air smelled of jet fuel and salt, mingling in a haze that clung to the early morning light. Inside the Combat Information Center, the air boss's voice was a whip crack. Alert all pilots. Immediate scramble. Arm and ready. In the hangar bay, 2 F/A-18 Super Hornets roared to life, their canopies sealing as pilots strapped in, eyes locked on the approaching silhouette. Weapons crews rolled carts of live ordnance toward the catapults. Marines, already in tactical gear, took up positions along catwalks and entry points, rifles slung but hands never far from triggers. Communications officers worked both Mandarin and English channels. Unidentified Chinese aircraft. State your intentions immediately. The only answer came from the sky, a deepening thunder of twin turbofan engines, now close enough to vibrate the deck beneath their boots. The captain's mind was already racing through scenarios. If this was an emergency landing, they'd have to secure the jet instantly. If it was a ploy, the consequences could spiral into an international incident before breakfast. From the bridge windows, the J-16 grew larger with every passing second, its angular frame glinting in the sunlight. Somewhere deep down, every sailor aboard Valiant felt the same truth: they were now standing on the edge of history, and the next move could set it ablaze. Every officer in the Combat Information Center knew the truth. There were no good choices, only fast ones. The Chinese fighter was too low, too committed to its approach for anyone to pretend this was a simple flyby. The intelligence chief's voice cut through the tension. Possible scenarios. 1. Pilot defecting. 2. Navigational failure. 3. Deliberate provocation to test our response. He didn't bother to list a fourth hostile action because everyone in the room was already thinking it. On the main display, the J-16's path overlaid in crimson, slicing straight into the carrier's restricted airspace. A countdown clock ticked on the side, 43 seconds to possible deck contact. A weapons officer leaned closer to the captain. If it's carrying more than a pilot bioagents, surveillance gear, explosives, we can't risk letting it land. Another voice countered. Shooting it down could spark a firefight. Beijing would use it as proof of aggression. The captain's gaze stayed locked on the screen, weighing the weightless balance between restraint and force. Down on the deck, the crews felt the shift in atmosphere. No one was talking now. The roar of the approaching jet seemed to fill every space, mingling with the faint metallic tremor of the carrier's hull under tension. It was the kind of moment where history could pivot in the space of a heartbeat, where one decision might avoid a war or start one. And for Captain Cole, the weight of that choice pressed heavier than the steel of the ship itself. In less than a minute, the Pacific might be calm again, or it might be the first battlefield of something far larger. Launch intercept now. Captain Cole's voice was sharp, decisive. Almost instantly, the deck erupted. 2 Fa-18 Super Hornets were hurled from the catapults, their afterburners carving white-hot scars into the pale morning sky. The fighters climbed hard, then banked toward the intruder, a lone Chinese J-16, its landing gear lowering, as if the Valiant's deck belonged to it. On the open channel, the air boss tried again, his tone clipped and firm. Unidentified Chinese fighter. Divert immediately or you will be engaged. Repeat, divert now. Only silence answered, broken by the low, building roar of twin turbofans. The Hornets closed to visual range. From his cockpit, Lieutenant Avery squeezed the trigger, releasing a single magnesium flare. The white blaze slashed across the J-16's nose, a bright warning in the soft dawn light. For an instant, the intruder dipped its wings as though weighing the command. Then, with deliberate calm, it leveled out and locked perfectly onto the carrier's glide path. On deck, yellow shirt handlers swept their arms in urgent motions, clearing every last piece of equipment. Marines positioned themselves in the hangar bay, rifles at low ready. Below deck, damage control crews braced for impact, prepared for fire, fuel leak, or sudden attack. Inside the Combat Information Center, analysts updated the situation. Chinese naval drills had surged off Hainan Island just 24 hours earlier. This was no accident. Whether it was a desperate defection, a dangerous provocation, or a calculated trap, the Valiant was now only seconds from the truth. 15 seconds, that was all that separated the Chinese J-16 from the steel deck of the USS Valiant. On the flight deck, motion became choreography. Yellow shirts swept their arms in precise arcs, tractors peeled away, and the landing area was stripped to bare steel. Arresting wires quivered in the dawn light, drawn tight like crossbow strings. Heat rippled above the non-skid, the air tasted of salt, JP-5, and fear. In the tower, Captain Cole stood rigid, a thumb hovering over the comm toggle. His jaw was locked, his eyes tracking the meatball and glide slope, the way a surgeon tracks a heartbeat. One call could end the threat or set the Pacific on fire before breakfast. LSO, talk him down or wave him off, he said, voice flat as a blade. Power, right for lineup, wave off, wave off. The landing signal officer barked, flashing frantic cut signals. The J-16 ignored them. Its gear hung like hooked claws. The tail hook lowered, steady as a metronome. 10 seconds. The Hornet slashed along starboard, afterburners screaming a last warning pass. Radios crackled, still no reply from the intruder. 8. Row holds, the air boss reminded, a taut thread in his voice. Warning shots only, unless hostile intent is clear. 6. In the CIC, analysts called out contacts multiple fast movers at sea, likely Chinese destroyers, altering course from the west. Washington's line chimed in cold. Status continuous. De-escalate if possible. Beijing's message stayed vaguer still. We are looking into it. 4. A sudden pop from the left flank Hornet, non-lethal chaff burst into a silvery cloud ahead of the J-16, glittering like rain in prop wash. 3. The fighter nudged throttle, riding through the haze, locked to the glide path as if magnetized. 2. Cole felt the ship hold its breath. Marines braced in the hangar bay, safeties off but muzzles low. Damage control teams crouched by foam carts, EOD waited in the shadows, eyes on the canopy. 1. The J-16's hook dipped toward wire 3. Cole's thumbs settled on the switch. Whatever came next would be irreversible. The arresting cable snapped taut, with a metallic twang as the J-16's hook bit wire 3. Tires screamed, rubber feathering into the steel. The fighter shuddered, rolled out, and stopped mid-deck foreign metal caged by American muscle. Secure that aircraft! Captain Cole's order cracked over the 1 megacoulomb. Marines fanned from both flanks, rifles up, footfalls drumming in unison. The canopy stayed closed. The pilot's visor was a black mirror holding the ship's morning sun. EOD, move. The disposal team jogged in with wands, mirrors, fiber optic scope, and chemical paper. Their world was measured in inches and quiet breaths. If the jet hit a shaped charge, a dispersal tank, or a booby-trap seat, they had seconds to catch it. On the hangar deck, sailors clustered around monitors, watching a jittery live feed. Above, the two Super Hornets carved tight circles, scanning the wide blue for company. CIC cut in. Multiple surface contacts, bearing 270, speed increasing probable destroyers. Screens painted wedges of radar light edging closer from the west. A hiss punctured the tension. The canopy locks disengaged. Marines stiffened, fingers riding the brake of their triggers. The pilot's right hand moved toward his chest rig. Object in hand, stand by! A squad leader snapped. It wasn't a pistol. It was a battered leather pouch, salt-stained, stitched, and sealed. An intel lieutenant slid forward, gloved, and took it like it might explode. Inside, under a wrap of oilskin, lay hard-copy maps, a folded memo stamped with unfamiliar unit chops, and a thumb drive marked with Chinese military insignia. The pilot finally spoke, English rough but clear. I have proof. They are planning something big. Cole exhaled once. Get him to medical, then debrief. Bird stays cold until EOD clears every panel. Captain, CIC added, Chinese ships have halted short of our screen. They're broadcasting for the return of pilot and property. On Valiant's deck, steel, salt, and silence waited for the next order. Deep inside the USS Valiant's secure operations room, the leather pouch lay open on a stainless steel table. Around it, a half-dozen intelligence officers worked in shifts, gloves on, eyes fixed on the contents like surgeons around a patient. There were high-resolution satellite images of Guam, Okinawa, and Pearl Harbor, each marked with cryptic notations in Mandarin. Encrypted communications logs scrolled across printouts, time-stamped with dates from just the past week. And in the center, a folded maritime chart of the Pacific, its shipping lanes traced in bold red ink, converging on choke points near disputed waters. The pilot identified himself as Captain Lang. His English was halting but urgent. He claimed to have fled China to stop a preemptive strike being planned within the next 6 months. He spoke of covert fleet movements, sleeper cells, and weapons already positioned far beyond what U.S. intelligence believed possible. As analysts began decrypting the data drive, patterns emerged. Some files aligned with known Chinese reconnaissance activity. Others hinted at capabilities the Pentagon had never confirmed: submarine-launched drones, orbital tracking systems, and joint cyber-sabotage operations. But there was a shadow of doubt. The precision of the data, the timing of his arrival, the theatrical nature of the landing, all could be a masterful deception meant to provoke an overreaction. Meanwhile, the situation outside the carrier shifted. Chinese destroyers had stopped short of the Valiant's protective screen, broadcasting on open channels. Return our pilot, return stolen property, stand down. In Washington, the Pentagon convened an emergency briefing while the State Department tried to keep diplomatic lines open. Captain Cole knew the choice ahead: keep Ling and risk escalation, or send him back and possibly lose the most valuable intelligence in years would echo for decades in the Pacific. In the mess deck, sailors whispered over cooling coffee about the pilot who landed a Chinese warplane on Valiant. To some, he was a hero. To others, a Trojan horse with a perfect smile and a timed fuse. On the bridge, Cole studied the plot destroyers holding just beyond the screen, bows pointed in like wolves testing a campfire. Washington argued across secure lines. Keep the man and exploit the pouch, or return him and deflate the crisis? Intelligence warned both paths could spring the same trap. The data looked real, but the theater of his arrival reeked of design. Meanwhile, Shanghai radio demands, legal phrases lacquered over threats. Hours bled away. Fuel states, patrol cycles, and diplomacy clocks all narrowed. Cole felt the ship waiting on his breath. 48 hours, he thought, to choose a future. Beyond the bow, the Pacific shone like glass. Beneath it, steel moved. The destroyers neither closed nor retreated. They watched patient, as if history itself were holding station. Inside the ship, decisions calcified into checklists. Guard the pilot, mirror the drive, sanitize the jet, keep the deck clear, keep tempers cooler still. The ship waited. The ocean listened for the next orders.